from my perspective, it has always been the case that the smaller the government, the more opportunity there is for there to be this type of corruption, because frankly, there's less oversight. There's a lack of media, and we can talk about some of the ideas that you had at the end in terms of the way you deal with this. But there's just more opportunity. You get a bigger bang for your buck when you're looking to buy essentially a politician at that level.
Right. Yeah. And two things. The founding fathers, and as I put in the book, they worried about that. The founding fathers believed, James Madison wrote, and I'll say it my way, that state houses were the potential backdoor to undermine our nation's democracy because of certain fundamental weaknesses with that smaller level of government, much more anonymous than federal or even local mayors might be. And guess who discovered the same thing? The Koch brothers and Alec. These state houses, for a combination of reasons, they have a lot of power over democracy, as put in the Constitution. They have a lot of power over substance, energy, taxes, workers, you name it, the environment, social policy. But almost no average people are paying attention to these places. They can't even name their state rep. But ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, Koch brothers, the NRA, and everyone else figured out, my God, these are the best places. We can go to them. We can get things done that in most cases are highly unpopular, that we would never get done in Congress. We can get them done in the State House, and half the time, no one even knows. So yeah, they've become in many ways the Achilles heel of governance because they're very weak in terms of people understanding what they're doing, but they're very strong in terms of what they can actually do, and that ends up being the true problem. And Democrats, and I would say, have contributed to this. And I say this with respect, but because we get so focused on the excitement of a presidential campaign or a few Senate seats, that's what we give our money to. That's what we organize around. That's when we show up to vote. The Koch brothers have decided we want to win the presidency if we can, but they don't care if someone's a boring, do nothing legislator in Columbus. If that person's voting for their agenda, they're getting what they want to get done. So these state houses have literally become the vehicle of doing almost everything they need to do. And this is why the filibuster discussion is so frustrating. They don't care if Washington does nothing. All they need out of Washington are judges to uphold these state laws and a few other things, because almost their entire agenda of trickle-down economics and so much that goes with it is actually totally fulfillable through state houses. And that's what they're doing right now. Until everyone else figures it out, they're going to keep winning that game.
Is there also not a problem that, Democratic voters are not paying attention to this on some level, but also there is a lack of a statewide structure within the Democratic Party. We also have this problem of a ossified at best, semi-corrupt, if you ask me, at worst, sort of consultant class, who there's a lot more money to be made in a federal election than a state election. There's a lot more money to be made in sort of like a nationalized, whether it's ad buys or whatever it is. And so there's all these incentives incentives to not look towards the states and and lack of incentives to look towards the states.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the consult. I never have, believe it or not, penetrated that consultant world that much. But I will simply say, there are groups, Eric Holder's is one, working with President Obama, DLCC and others that are emerging, trying to sort of make this case. And they started to make it the last couple of years. They were very helpful in our effort, for example, to deal with this gerrymandering, which we've done somewhat successfully. But these are one-off programs as opposed to the mindset of the entire effort. The heart of what the other side is doing is state houses first, get them gerrymandered, make them undemocratic. Everything flows from that power. On our side, it's still, even though some are trying, it's really late in the game. But if you look at where resources are going, to your point, it's almost entirely going to go to the multi-$100 million Senate campaigns. and then some scraps back in states, even though, by the way, smaller amounts of money go so much further at the state level. It's state house races, it's state organizing. Karl Rove's operation in 2010 that won so many states was a $30 million budget. You're spending billions in a presidential race. And that's why I put in the book, if you took a single digit percentage of your presidential spend and divvied it up over 4 years, and you said, we're going to invest this in democracy supporting efforts in local races, state house races in all states, not only would you have an enormous, better chance of succeeding there, I also think you have a better chance of winning the presidential race every 4 years because you've built that infrastructure. My guess is some people hear that and think, well, that's crazy. Who would ever do that? And the answer is the Koch brothers. That's what they did. They literally said, we're going to spread our money across all states every single year. The heart of democracy is these state houses. We're going to win them, and then we're going to clinch them through gerrymandering and other law changes. It's worked like a charm for them. Win or lose federal, they are winning at the state level. We have to, whatever the consultant looks like or whatever else, we have to not have these be Eric Holder's program, someone else's program. It's got to be the mindset of the entire operation, or we'll continue to lose the battle.
And just to remind people, I think was it David Koch who was spending a tremendous amount of money as early as, I believe, the early 1980s on the Libertarian Party. I mean, so this has been a 40-year more than multi-million dollar project for them. I mean, tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars that they have spent. Absolutely. 5 or 6 years ago, we were talking about how they had created essentially a parallel party structure to the Republican Party.
Right.
And the problem is that even for the Democrats, there isn't the same incentive for any billionaire out there to do that, both because they don't have the ideological disposition, and they don't get, the Koch brothers have I think they're genuinely ideologues, but there's a return on their investment.
Right. Exactly. For them, it's an investment. It pays back multiple times over at least. But no, that's what they did. And by the way, if you read Jane Mayer's Dark Money, which I cite a number of times in my book, they also understood, it's interesting. The libertarian effort was a failure. I think David Koch ran for president and he lost. Vice president. And that's when he decided it's not going to work this way. We've got to go through the Republican Party. The other observation they made, though, and they figured out that their agenda was not popular. That agenda would never succeed in a world of a robust democracy. People, trickle-down economics, it's too much have and have not. It just doesn't work. They know it doesn't work for most people. So they figured out we're only going to get what we need to get done in a world where democracy is subverted. And they also figured out state houses are a really good place to get unpopular things passed because, again, no one's paying attention. These state house members are driven by all the worst incentives. So their state house strategy is also driven by a keen observation that almost nothing they stand for would actually do well in a world of robust democracy. So state house after state house after state house, if you want to do something really bad, a crazy gun law that only 15% of a people support, attack Roe v. Wade, which most people don't support, you do it through a state house because those state house members are so unaccountable. Not only will it pass, even if it gets struck down by court, the people who voted for it will get reelected, and they know that. So the Koch brothers really knew, and there are quotes I put in the book. They are acknowledging our agenda is really not that popular. In a real democracy, it would never happen. We must therefore go to the least democratic institutions to get it done. And by the way, we can use those institutions to keep democracy at bay more broadly, and that's what they're doing. And they say it in the open.
And if you control the federal courts, all they need to do is basically unshackle these states, and the states
totally.
They want it.
That's what they need. The reason they don't want to filibuster for judges is because that's the one thing most important to if they're leading everything through state houses, which they are. The one thing they can't afford is federal courts stopping them or federal legislation. So you apply the filibuster to stop the federal legislation. but you don't apply it for judges because you do need judges to uphold all these crazy laws that, 15, 20 years ago, most of these attacks on voting rights wouldn't even have happened because the Voting Rights Act wouldn't have allowed it. But you need federal courts to basically give a red carpet to all this crazy stuff.